After the premiere of Reservoir Dogs, Quentin spent 6 months in Amsterdam. The first few months he did what everyone does in Amsterdam. Later, Roger Avary joined him, and they started work on the screenplay that would later become Pulp Fiction. Quentin already had in his hands the proposal for his next project, with a budget of at least $1 million. This happened thanks to Danny DeVito, who was devastated at not being able to participate in the making of Reservoir Dogs. Later, Danny would make studios pay just to read a new Tarantino script, and later became the producer for Pulp Fiction, helping Quentin to receive an $8.5 million budget. Meanwhile, in the Netherlands, the screenwriters had come up with something epic. They took all the drafts and decided to combine them into a new project. First, Avary's Chaos Rules the World became the Golden Watch scene. They also added a deleted scene with the soiled car interior from True Romance, a perfected story about a date, and a dialogue that never made it into Natural Born Killers.
We're not at the finish yet, baby.
By mid-1993, they had it finished. Quentin asked Avary to continue working on the movie with him, but Roger needed money fast because he wanted to get married and to shoot his own film, Killing Zoe. So he sold the rights to Pulp Fiction.
It's legal to sell it.
The rights were bought immediately by Miramax Studios, and Tarantino began preparations for shooting. He was able to get almost the whole Reservoir Dogs team: Tim Roth, Steve Buscemi, Harvey Keitel, producer Lawrence Bender, creative director and designer David and Sandy Wasco, operator Andrzej Sekula, who after a severe accident filmed Pulp Fiction from a wheelchair, and his irreplaceable helper and main supporter, editor Sally Menke.
I knew from meeting Quentin that it was going to be something really special.
Then he began casting the other roles. The main hero was to be Vic Vega, whose part was written for Michael Madsen, who rejected the role in favor of playing opposite Kevin Costner in Wyatt Earp. Later, he would come to regret that decision. The character was turned into Vic's brother, Vincent, and producer Lawrence Bender was planning on inviting Daniel Day-Lewis to play the part. But Quentin had an idea, which caused everyone to think him bat crazy.
Vincent.
Yes, now it's difficult to imagine anyone else playing Vincent Vega, but by 1993 no one was taking John Travolta seriously anymore. In the 70s, the head of Disney Studios, Michael Eisner, called him the biggest star on the planet since he had been nominated for an Oscar for Saturday Night Fever, and starred in the cult favorite Grease. However, a series of unfortunate decisions led him to act in films like Chains of Gold, The Experts, and Look Who's Talking. As much as I like John Travolta, I couldn't bring myself to watch some fucking talking baby movie.
Oh! Who is that?
People had stopped taking Travolta seriously, but Tarantino saw genius in him. In one of his favorite films, Blowout, by Brian De Palma, Travolta put on what Quentin would call one of the best acting performances in the history of cinema. From their first meeting, it was clear fate brought them together. When he stepped into Tarantino's cluttered apartment, Travolta, who owned a 20-bedroom mansion in Maine, apartments in Florida, and 3 personal jets, was shocked. Quentin was living at the same apartment that John had rented when he first arrived in Los Angeles in 1974.
Nobody knows it right from the start. I gave you my heart. Whoa.
After Tarantino spent several hours quoting lines from Travolta's movies, played Grease the board game with him, and showed him the complete collection of his films, John accepted the offer to play Vincent Vega.
All right, it was a miracle. Can we go now?
To Tarantino's surprise, the decision to cast Travolta was not met with universal applause. It even became the reason why the heads of Miramax started to doubt their investment in the project. Even Lawrence Bender was unsure in the beginning. You can get anybody in the world. Why do you want John Travolta? But Tarantino didn't budge. It was Travolta, or no one. And he even told the producers that he wouldn't make the film if John wasn't in it.
Don't be looking at me like that, all right? I can feel your look.
Once again, under pressure from Quentin, The producers and the studio backed off. Later, thanks to Keitel, the cast was joined by his neighbor, Bruce Willis. Turns out he was a fan of Reservoir Dogs and could quote any line from it. Though Quentin had initially hoped to get Sylvester Stallone to play Butch, he was so impressed with Willis's enthusiasm that he chose him, giving yet another actor's career a second wind.
So, Mr. Willis, let me ask you a question here. Is this the finest moment of your acting career, or what?
Pinnacle. From here on in, it slides down the backside.
Pulp Fiction allowed critics to see Bruce for the first time as more than.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
As for Samuel L. Jackson, despite having a role written specifically for him, he almost jumped ship when he came to a reading only to find it was an audition with another candidate, Paul Calderone.
Oh, Vincent Vega, our man in Amsterdam.
Who initially got the part. After that, Samuel went to see Tarantino in person and read the monologue from the Bible, adding in some of his own improvisations.
And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger.
His skill amazed the director so much that Tarantino cast him in almost all of his films and never made him audition again.
That's all you had to say.
As for those who didn't make it into the film, it's worth mentioning that Ellen DeGeneres auditioned for the role, which was eventually played by Rosanna Arquette.
Which one's Trippy? One with all the shit in her face? No, that's Jody. That's my wife.
Finally, having read the screenplay to Uma Thurman over the phone and convincing her to participate, on the 20th of September, 1993, he began shooting Pulp Fiction. Filming had started, and still, Quentin was choosing who he was going to play. Though he saw himself as Lance the drug dealer, he decided on playing the anxious Jimmy.
Don't fucking Jimmy me, Jules! Okay?
Thinking that he wanted to be on the other side of the camera in the final scene. Vincent Vega and Marcellus Wallace's wife. The scenes involving Tarantino were directed by Robert Rodriguez.
They look like a couple of dorks.
Ha ha ha, you're closed, motherfucker.
When one thinks of Pulp Fiction, one instantaneously pictures the interior of the Jack Rabbit Slim's restaurant. The decorations for it cost $100,000. No wonder the milkshakes were so expensive.
Did you just order a $5 shake?
Mm-hmm.
On a serious note, besides the obvious references, there were a few more interesting ones. The walls of the restaurant were hung with posters of Roger Corman's films, one of Tarantino's favorite directors. The waiter, played by Steve Buscemi, looks like one of Quentin's favorite musicians, Buddy Holly. And the tables made of cars were borrowed from the movie Speedway, starring Elvis Presley.
All you gotta do is just let yourself go.
By the way, the same building that was home to Jack Rabbit Slim's also housed Butch's hotel room, the room which Vincent and Jules enter, and the basement of the Mason-Dixie pawn shop. It was from the parking lot of this very building, during filming, that Quentin's car was stolen, the same car which Vincent drives in the movie. 20 years later, a policeman found it accidentally when he stopped two teens who were stealing it from its new owner, who had no idea that he had spent the last 15 years riding around in Quentin Tarantino's car.
What's more chicken shit than fucking with a man's automobile? I mean, don't fuck with another man's vehicle. You don't do it. It's just against the rules.
In Pulp Fiction, Quentin included more references than in any other of his works. Vince and Mia's dance was a reference to 8.5. Butch and Marcel's meeting, Psycho. And the glowing case was from Kiss Me Deadly. As for the dialogues, half of the movie was references to other films.
You want that gun, don't you, Zed? Go ahead and pick it up.
You want that gun? Pick it up. I wish you would.
The most important of which was Jules' sermon, which practically copied Karate Kiba.
And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger. who poison and destroy my brothers.
Considering the result of the premiere, which occurred at Cannes in May of 1994, it's hard to believe that the film only cost $8.5 million. Hell, just Bruce Willis's paycheck for Die Hard 2 was bigger than the whole budget for Pulp Fiction.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
A few days later, Quentin received the grand prize of the film festival.
Pulp Fiction.
Cannes started a chain reaction. The movie received awards from the Film Critics Association for Best Picture, Best Directing, Best Screenplay, Best Acting done by John Travolta, as well as Golden Globe and BAFTA for Best Screenplay, as well as 7 Oscar nominations. Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Supporting Actor and Actress, Best Director, Screenplay, and Film Editing. But at the 67th Academy Awards ceremony, Pulp Fiction together with The Shawshank Redemption were victims of the sweeping success that was Forrest Gump.
I gotta pay.
I believe he said he had to go pee.
It was one of the most predictable battles for the Oscars, but Pulp Fiction did get a statuette for Best Original Screenplay, and their acceptance speech is considered to be one of the best in the history of the Oscars.
My wife Gretchen, who I love more than anything in the world, and I really have to take a pee right now, so I'm gonna go. Thank you.
Hey, do you like our work? Let us know with your like and comment. Push that subscribe button and share with your friends. If you want to support the project financially, become our sponsor on Patreon or YouTube sponsorship. Thank you.